We've got massive free agency news for the Phoenix Suns as backup shooting guard Eric Gordon intends to opt out of his contract, and he is going to be declining his player option. That means that GM James Jones and the rest of the Suns front office is going to have to look for a replacement scoring punch coming off the bench. We're going to break it all down for you guys right here on Suns Digest. My name is CJ Pierre. We're going to get into the Eric Gordon news, what it means for the Phoenix Suns, and look at some potential replacements. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, we noticed that about 80% of you guys are watching our videos, and we appreciate that, but you haven't subscribed to the channel yet. If you want to make sure that you stay up to date with the latest Suns news, free agency speculation, draft speculation, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing that we are going to have cooking up for you guys. And strap in because we got a good one for you as we get into the latest news about Eric Gordon declining his player option. That is a huge impact player for the Phoenix Suns. He was the primary scorer coming off the bench for Phoenix this past season. They ran up a starting lineup with Bradley Beal, Grayson Allen, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Jusuf Nurkic. Most nights when everyone was healthy, Eric Gordon was the guy coming off the bench to give that additional offensive punch, that additional offensive firepower. So losing him is going to be a big deal. The Phoenix Suns are going to have to make a drastic change, a drastic addition if they want to kind of fill that void. Now, we have talked about the possibility of Eric Gordon leaving in a previous video. If you want to check that out, hit the video tab and try and find that video. We also had a LeBron James to Phoenix update in there. My buddy Bruce is the one that broke that down, but let's just touch back on Eric Gordon for a second and get into the news from Evan Siddery that Eric Gordon will soon decline his $3.4 million player option with the Suns. Gordon will receive interest on the veterans minimum market from contenders in need of additional floor spacing. So if you just kind of take that report at face value, Siddery right there, he could be talking about the Phoenix Suns. The Suns are looking for perimeter shooting with new head coach Mike Budenholzer running the offense. They're going to be looking for more guys that can space the floor with Durant, with Beal, with Booker out there so that they can shoot more shots from the perimeter. And Eric Gordon kind of fits that mold, but it looks like the Suns are going to have to look elsewhere because it looks like Eric Gordon may be looking at, maybe becoming more of an impact player on another team, maybe looking at the Suns and maybe he's not liking what he's seeing in terms of what his potential playing time could be. Maybe he's been told that he's only going to be like a really reserve player and he wants an opportunity to play. That's stuff we're going to have to wait and see about. But right now, Eric Gordon leaving, declining his player option, and that could have a drastic impact on what the Suns look like moving forward. So how exactly will losing Eric Gordon impact the Phoenix Suns? So right off the bat, you're losing your number one scorer coming off the bench. That's big. That's huge in the NBA. You need multiple guys that can put the ball in the bucket. And Eric Gordon is one of the guys who is able to do it naturally. He's been able to do it for a long time. And with Phoenix, having him as an option, particularly on nights where Bradley Beal was hurt or Kevin Durant was hurt, you need that additional scoring threat. And he was a solid contributor for the Suns all season last year. If we take a look at his stats, he averaged 11 points per game. That's nothing to sneeze at, particularly if you're a guy that comes off the bench. Now, he shot 37% from three-point range, 41% on threes from the corner. That is something that's going to happen a lot when you're playing with guys that dominate the basketball like Beal, Booker, and Durant. Eric Gordon found himself in a lot of opportunities where he was taking open threes and taking uncontested threes, and he was a contributing factor. We saw him have a lot of moments. He kind of disappeared a little bit in the playoffs against the Minnesota Timberwolves, but to be fair, most of the team disappeared in the playoffs against the Minnesota Timberwolves. So you can't put too much on Eric Gordon for that. So he was a contributing factor, and it's not going to be easy to replace him. Finding guys who are comfortable coming off the bench and scoring isn't easy. The best guys to ever do it, guys like Jamal Crawford, guys like Lou Williams, they're a dime a dozen. They don't just grow on trees. So losing Eric Gordon, a guy who is comfortable coming off the bench and being that scorer and being a facilitator at times, it's going to be a hard hole to fill. So as we look at the Phoenix Suns roster as it currently stands right now, they're only going to have 9 guys potentially under contract. Right now, it's only 8 if you factor in the fact that Josh Okogie hasn't made a decision on his player option yet. But if you look down the board, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Jusuf Nurkic, a guy who's on the trading block. Nasir Little, a guy who's on the trading block. Grayson Allen has been mentioned by some other outlets as a possible trade chip, but he can't be traded until the trade deadline next season. Then, of course, you've got David Roddy, another project, and then Damian Lee, who did accept his player option, and he will be coming back for the Phoenix Suns as of right now. There's a potential that he could also be a trade chip, but we're not going to get too far ahead of ourselves. The Suns right now currently have 8 guys on the roster, 9 if you include Josh Okogie, if he picks up his player option. So there are still a lot of holes to fill, despite the fact that Eric Gordon is gone. So now that adds to the list of Suns' needs. As I've talked about on this podcast several times, point guard, point guard, point guard. They need a point guard, someone who can facilitate, whether it be a backup or someone that they insert into the starting lineup. They need interior depth. They need guys who can come in and be bodies on the front line to back up Jusuf Nurkic, if they even keep Jusuf Nurkic. And now they need additional scoring coming off the bench. Now, there's obviously talk that the Suns will re-sign Royce O'Neal, but he doesn't necessarily fill that void. He's more of a defensive player, 3-and-D kind of player. The Suns need offensive firepower coming off the bench. Now, there are some other options that would still be available to the Suns, even though they're a second-year team, and when they're digging in the veteran minimum BIM. So let's take a look at some free agent targets that the Suns can look at to replace Eric Gordon. Now, I've got 2 names that I feel like Suns fans will be okay with, will be happy that we talk about, and actually might fit with what the Suns are trying to do with head coach Mike Budenholzer. So let's go ahead and start with Kelly Oubre Jr. Now, he is a more natural scorer. He is not necessarily the greatest 3-point shooter, but he's someone who can attack on the offensive end in a variety of different ways. He can flash to the basket, he's good in the mid-range, and he can hit 3-point shots, particularly if he gets hot. He can easily score 20, 25 points on any given night. Last year with the Philadelphia 76ers, he averaged 15 points per game and 5 rebounds per game. Now, he's also got some size to him. He's 6'7", so that helps him on the rebound. That's on the glass, which is an area where the Suns struggled, so he can help in that department as well. He's also pretty young still. He's only 28 years old, and he's got some growing to do in terms of his game. He's not necessarily the full version of himself, or at least he's close to it, and that version of it can be a solid contributor off the bench for the Phoenix Suns. So I think Kelly Oubre Jr. would be a solid fit in terms of what Phoenix is trying to do. The next name I'm going to talk about might be a little bit more of an under-the-radar name, a name that people may not necessarily be talking all about, and that is Alec Burks. Now, Alec Burks, he's got a little bit more facilitator in him, more so than Kelly Oubre Jr. does, but he also is a solid scorer. If we take a look at his time last season with the New York Knicks, it was kind of up and down. He was in the lineup, he was out of the lineup. He still ended up averaging 10 points per game last season, and he shot pretty decently from three-point range, shooting 37%, 36% on corner threes. He also has some decent size to him standing at 6'6". He's a little bit older at 32 years old, but he is a solid contributing factor. If you watch the New York Knicks playoff series after the guys were going down and there were a lot of injuries, Alec Burks had a lot of shining moments where he stepped up and was able to be a contributing factor and keep the Knicks afloat, particularly in their series against the Indiana Pacers. Although the Knicks didn't end up advancing, Alec Burks still showed that he's got game and he can be a contributor. So I think he is someone that the Phoenix Suns could also benefit from taking a look at, someone who can be a scorer, someone who can facilitate at times and take a load off, some burden off of guys like Beal, like Booker, and like a potential point guard option that the Suns may look at, whether it be free agency or the draft. I think that this is the direction that the Suns should go in terms of filling this need. When it comes to the needs of point guard, big man interior help, that's something that I think that they could look towards the draft and help them if they decide to keep that number 22 overall pick that they have. When it comes to finding someone who can be a contributor right away in free agency, I don't think that's something that the Suns are going to want to take a risk on with a draft pick. I think that is something that they're going to want a proven commodity in. There are a lot of wings, veteran wings, that are going to be in that veteran minimum market, but they're going to want someone specifically who can fill up the cup, who's going to be able to score points with the best of them. So I wouldn't look at someone like a Nicholas Batum to fill that role, or a Taurean Prince to fill that role. There are other guys who are out there who are more primary, that they're more adept at scoring. That is their kind of number one skill set is scoring, and that's something that the Suns are definitely going to need coming off the bench. I feel like in terms of the defensive aspect of it, I think the Suns will be fine, but I think that they're going to be able to find other pieces to fill those voids if they end up re-signing guys like Royce O'Neal, getting some interior help, particularly if they look for that in the draft or in veteran minimum free agency as well. But I think that particularly when it comes to finding a scoring punch off the bench, I think this slots into their number 2 need right now, right behind finding a facilitating point guard, number 1, scoring punch off the bench, number 2, interior depth, number 3. I think that's kind of where the Suns are. I think guys like Kelly Oubre Jr. and Alec Burks could be great replacements for Eric Gordon. But again, the top news is Eric Gordon declining his player option. Now that means the Suns are going to have to make some moves if they want to remain as a contender in the NBA, particularly in this tough Western Conference. Owner Matt Ishbia has been preaching how they're in win now mode. They're going to need to make some moves to kind of fill this void that's been left by Eric Gordon leaving. That's just what I think, though. We want to hear from you guys. Let us know what you guys think about this move in the comments. Are the Suns going to be better off without Eric Gordon? And who do you think they should target in free agency to fill that void? But that's all I've got for you guys this time. Again, my name is CJ Pierre. This is Suns Digest. We are the place to be for all the latest Phoenix Suns news. If you want to make sure you're not missing anything in regards to free agency, the draft, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing that we're going to have pushing out for you guys. We're going to have tons more over the course of the offseason and heading into next season. That's all I got for you guys. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you next time, and go Phoenix Suns.